Welcome back to Shine In and Out, where science meets soul. I'm your host, Sammy Stoltz, and today's conversation is about what happens when love changes form and the quiet courage it takes to follow what is true instead of what is familiar. Our guest today is Amalia Natalio, an author, relationship revealer, and spiritual guide. Her memoir, We to Me, traces the end of a marriage not as a failure, but as an initiation into clarity, agency, and a more honest way of relating. This is not a conversation about blame or bypassing pain. It's about pattern recognition, embodied healing, and what becomes possible when we stop trying to save the relationship at the cost of self. Okay, welcome, Amalia.
Thank you, Sammy. Shall I call you Sammy? I don't know. I know you as
Yeah,
Sammy, but
that's
you're
perfect.
very official here as
No, that's
semantic.
perfect. I'm going to be Sammy to the world. Keep it informal. um,
Ready.
yeah. So I would just love to paint a picture of who you are for everyone listening. How did you get to where you are today?
So I am a mom of four. I have three boys and one girl, and they are amazing humans. I'm very proud of each and every one of them for how they show up in the world. And so that's probably my number one. It's consumed the majority of my adult life. So, like, I think that's the first and foremost to me accomplishment, if you will, of my life. And they've influenced where I am today more than anyone. And also, I also strongly believe that our relationships, whether it's familial, friendships, professional, and most importantly, intimate relationships, have the biggest impact and influence on our lives. And I feel like the relationships that I have fostered over my lifetime and the relationships that I continue to foster as I sit here now in front of you and as I move forward in my life are ones that have really influenced how I've gotten to where I am today. And I feel like if we can have an awareness of the relationship with ourselves first and foremost, and then recognize how we are showing up within those intimate partnerships, relationships, family dynamics, professional dynamics. I feel like if we had just a hint more awareness, if everyone did, then it would
Mm.
really shift the way we engage with one another. And so that's somewhat part of my mission here is to really learn through my own experiences and then share these little nuggets of wisdom that I find have been helpful to me. And I will say, not every nugget of wisdom that I have lived and that I share is going to be helpful to every single person. I feel like anyone who says, I have the holy grail of how you handle XYZ relationship. How is that possible? It can't be. We each have our own personal experience. So yes, I can take a little bit from here and a little bit from there and a little bit from tripping and falling and picking myself up and trying something new. And we'll each find our way. We all have it in us, but we do learn from one another and we do learn from our own experiences. So I think it's a combination, but how great if we could learn from one another and not have to trip quite as many times if we just take in some of the wisdom from others. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, but that's just what wants to come forth right now in this conversation.
That's gorgeous. I am a person that really tries to learn from other people's mistakes, and I think listening to people's stories and what they learned from those things, especially relationships, because like you said, no two relationships are the same, and you can't have
Right.
a universally applicable, you know, theme for these things. But even just you and I, as we were discussing before we started recording, last time we saw each other, we were both in beautiful, happy relationships. And now we're meeting as people who have chosen to be single as a journey toward ourselves. And, despite those being wonderful relationships, making that decision almost being harder than what we'll discuss from your book, We to Me, um, as a completely different relationship dynamic and a completely different way to shift from relationship of we to me. So I'm very excited to jump into all of this. Okay, so with that
Do
being
you,
said,
can I just,
yeah, please
well, I was
jump
going to
in,
say,
jump in.
Can I share one thing about that? Okay. So yes, I think with my book Weed to Me, there was a, if you want to call it a smoking gun, reason why the marriage ended. However, that was more to me, there was infidelity in the marriage. And so therefore, for most people, that would be the end. Doesn't have to be the
Mhm,
end. For me, it was. But there are many, many people where that's actually the catalyst that brings them closer. So it doesn't mean for every relationship that it's over. Again, there's no
mhm,
like cookie cutter for every single person. That said, within my second marriage, there wasn't anything like that. It was very loving and very nourishing on so many levels. And there are times when we recognize and we realize that, the saying, all you need is love.
mhm.
I don't think it's true when it comes
Mm,
to romantic partnerships, intimate partnerships, because you can have love and you could be incompatible. You can have
mhm.
love and you can have complete viewpoints on where you want to go in life. And that's
Yeah.
not enough. You need it. It's amazing. It's great. But there's also other factors I think that really play a role in whether or not a partnership, a marriage is going to have longevity. And I truly believe that every relationship, whether it lasts 3 months, 3 years, 30 years, there's something that we can learn from that encounter. And if we choose to, you often hear about people who continue to date the same person over and over and over again. They
Mhm,
keep repeating the same pattern. And there's a reason that that's happening for them because they're not quite, they think that they're changing. They think that they are choosing a different partner, but really there's an undercurrent, there's an energy, oftentimes a nervous system
yeah.
program that's running in the background that is attracting these same types of relationships to them, even if they're in different packages and even if they feel like I got it this time. This is he
Mhm,
or she is totally different. Just to come to find out a year and a half later, they're the exact same person that they dated 5 years ago. When we notice these subtle changes and we notice when our body is telling us something, we notice that moment of that like pang in our stomach when we know something's not right, but we might be conditioned as women to follow the good girl conditioning of I
mm,
don't want to make a fuss, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to create a big problem out of nothing. Like, it's not a big deal. I can handle it. It's those little tiny micro signals that alert us there's something out of alignment. There's an incongruency. There's an energetic mismatch. And when we continuously override that or ignore that is when we find ourselves in what some people would call a toxic relationship or a dysfunctional relationship, an unhealthy
mm,
relationship. There's often signals along the way. To bring it back to what you were saying about loving relationships, even in loving relationships where there's nothing quote unquote wrong, there's still, you can feel this undercurrent of something that's not quite right. Nothing's really wrong, but it's not quite right. And I feel like it's a really courageous action. So bravo to you, Sammy, and bravo to me, as hard as it is to have enough courage and not just for yourself but for the other person to say this cannot continue in the form that it's in. And I know from being married for many years and having friends that have been married for decades, some of whom are sort of happy and some of whom are absolutely miserable. I did not want to get to a point where I looked at Misha and said, I don't even like you. I don't want to be around you. It's like this like feeling of like, oh God.
I
I want to
know.
be able to look at him in ears and go, you are an amazing human. And how lucky was I to spend those years with you? And how lucky and blessed am I that you're still in my life now? Wow. I just love you. That's the type of relationship that I want to have with someone that I chose to spend time with, that I chose to build a life with, that I loved with every ounce of my being and still do love. And I
Mhm,
feel like if more of us really tuned into that within ourselves, we might notice the relationships that we're in that no longer fit, whether it's romantic or friendship. It can be all kinds of relationships. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, beautifully said. It is so difficult, I think, especially if you're not used to being aware of what's going on inside you and interpreting it, is this fear-based? Like, sometimes people self-sabotage relationships. So everything's going amazing, and your fear is saying, "I'm gonna lose them one day, so might as well lose them now." So how do you differentiate what we did as knowing this inner knowing that later in the relationship there would be resentments, even though there was nothing technically wrong, versus doing it because you're afraid of a potential future outcome.
Oh, that's a great question. I love it. I love it. I love it. I think the number one key piece of this is your own self knowledge and your own self awareness. So, and sometimes you're not able to see it yourself. You might need somebody to help you, whether that's a mentor, a therapist, a good friend, somebody that you know is going to be brutally honest with you about your blind spots, your shadow side, if you will.
That's exactly what I
So I
call them,
think
blind
that's
spots.
yeah. I think that's the key is just if you aren't self-aware, and I think most of us are to a certain degree, but if we really, really want and desire and are clinging to a certain outcome, that can taint how we see things. That can taint how we engage within the relationship and with ourselves. We can talk ourselves into or out of uh, actions that might really be aligned with our highest and best future. When you have a doubt, when you feel like, okay, am I doing this out of fear? I would check in with someone to give you just a little bit of a litmus test if
Mm.
that is justifiable ideology or not. And then check in with yourself again. Like if they say something to you that you're still not quite feeling, sit with it for a little while. Start to pay attention within the relationship and see if there's things that jump out at you. Notice if your belly is talking to you. Notice if your heart starts racing. Notice if you feel tightness in your throat. Notice if your mind starts racing. Notice if you start getting sweaty or you feel this like leaning back or turning away sensation. You're going to have clues and cues as to what is happening. It's just a matter of paying attention and then taking that in as information versus ignoring it, pushing it to the side, especially if it's an answer that you don't want.
Yes, which I definitely have gone through a journey of getting to know the signals that my body's giving me and feeling like interpreting the pull on my soul to do certain things. And one thing that comes up for me is the mental aspect of all of this, like the idea of a person versus what's actually in front of you, or the potential that you see for the relationship versus what you're actually in. And a lot of what I did in my previous relationship was I could be okay with anything in the moment. Like, I know your intentions were good, so even if you messed up, like, it doesn't really bother me, you know? But
Uh-huh.
what I kept asking myself was, can I deal with this forever? And that's what made every issue so much bigger. And I'm still trying to figure out if that's a good way to handle things or if it's going to be destructive in any relationship because forever as a concept is huge.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that puts a lot of pressure on you and the other person when you put it into a forever category. I love the fact that your approach generally is like in the moment, am I okay with this? Do I feel comfortable with this? I guess the only reframe I would have on that is this a consistent situation that you're constantly having to be okay with? Or
Mm,
is it unique in this situation? Is it one and
mm,
done? Is it periodic? Or is it every week you're having to be okay with something? Every 6 weeks, you're having to be okay with something? That to me is the bigger question because I think we all have a pretty reasonable threshold of adaptability. We can stretch ourselves. We can be okay with things that we normally wouldn't be okay with because we love the person or we care deeply about the person. And we're happy to do that for them in that one instance. But when it becomes something that's habitual or consistent and you're having to dim yourself or be okay with something you're not okay with, then I think
Mm.
we're getting into territory that's a clear signal that there's some misalignment.
Yeah, that is like you were mentioning briefly earlier, the good girl. That almost like societal training that we've all been introduced to that, you know, just step back, be nice about it. And it's same with all of this. Like it's just because it's familiar doesn't mean it's right. And being able to build that distinction for yourself is a journey.
Mhm.
I think it's easier to avoid all of those emotions and to just, keep living. And for a period, I did that. And it took like a split moment of interacting with these people that I felt that flow with intellectually. And we were just all so excited about learning and growing and knowledge in general. And it made me beam. And I remember driving in the car on the way back and I started bursting into tears because I realized that that was what was missing in my relationship and that that was something that I need forever, like to be. And I didn't realize I was kind of depressed and kind of dimming my light and kind of, you know, holding those thoughts back because I didn't think that they would be received in the way that I would line up, or be able to continue the conversation with. So sometimes it's a snap moment too. So for you, was it
Definitely.
was it a building type thing?
Uh, I'm feeling into how much I want to share in this moment. It was little hints over time that I tucked away. I was aware of, but I tucked away because they were small things in the grand scheme of the relationship, of the
Mhm.
marriage. And the chemistry and the connection and the goodness of it was so bright and so profound that I felt like, I have a pretty reasonable capacity. At least I thought I did at the time. But what I didn't know is my nervous system had a very limited
No.
capacity. So even though I knew some of these things and I tucked them away, the thought of taking an action to end the relationship or shift it in any way was the most terrifying thought to my nervous system. So my nervous
No.
system would say, we can do anything as long as we stay in this, because if we're in this, then we're okay. And this is a
Mm.
whole other gigantic topic that we could probably talk for hours about, and
Yeah.
how we relate to each other, how we're magnetized to each other, how people are drawn together, and how people stay together solely because of nervous system co-regulation when
Mm.
really not an ideal or healthy dynamic for them in the long run. So that definitely played a role. And then I know enough to be dangerous when it comes to the story arc of the two of us. And
Mm.
so I was pulling from all sorts of soul history, which also made this a little bit more challenging
Mm.
to unwind, because I wasn't just looking at this lifetime. And I don't know if your listeners, this is an ideology or something that they're familiar with or believe in. uh, but when you have memories, very clear, vivid memories of other lifetimes together, and you're attempting to live a life in this lifetime with someone with the memories of the others overlaid on top of it, it can get a little bit confusing where you stand and what's happening now versus what is carryover from other lifetimes. And then how does that translate into now? And then what do you do? And how do I ignore this thing over here when I'm over here in this? It got to be a lot for me to have to sort, not just in my head, but in my body, in my emotional and energetic field. And then
Mhm.
in proximity to him, your nervous system is also lighting up. And then what is that information telling you? I don't think I'm unique in that either, where people may or may not realize we're picking up on energies from other lifetimes of people, because we often are drawn to people that we have a history with. And you're here to complete something, or you're here to play again together in this life, and you're drawn together for a certain reason or purpose. And so there's all of these elements that we can take into consideration. And I feel like that's what this the book I'm working on now will really help people do, is to decipher some of these clues and
Mm.
to be able to understand what their body is telling them if they have these little glimpses or glimmers of memories that may not be completely clear, but are giving them information that they could utilize now. And what do you do with that? And how do you move forward knowing that? So, work in progress, but I'm hopeful that it'll be something that'll be really, really supportive and impactful for people who might find themselves in a situation like us, Sammy, who don't know what to do.
It's impossible and it's uncharted territory, right? It's so much easier. Not that it's great to have any form of infidelity or a big falling out, but that makes the decision distinct and there's a moment and you're done. But when there's still so much love there and like so much love, I do find myself going back and forth. Like I haven't changed my mind because I know I'm doing the right thing, but it would be so easy to go back and just be in that safe, warm, known environment. But I acknowledge that it would be selling myself and my potential in this life short, as much as I hate to say it. So, yeah, I really appreciate that. And one, like you said, the nervous system co-regulation, like, how do you feel about this being in contact, being friends after a relationship with such beautiful chemistry like that?
I'm not sure that I want to fully answer that because I don't know that I could answer the question right in this moment in a way that I would want to stand behind if you asked me again a year from now or 2
So
years from
fair.
now, because I'm so living in it. Do I
So
think it's
fair.
possible? Yes. Do I think it's easy? Definitely not. Do I think it's the best path for most people? No. And I'm not sure I can tell you where I fall right this minute, but where I'm going to
Mhm.
fall as time goes on, I'm not sure. And I think it also depends on the other person and clear conversations around what it is you both wish to create together now that you're no longer romantically linked. So
Mm.
if you're both on the same page, I think that's helpful. But when it comes to your nervous system and the way that you engage with each other, just because you've now mentally put each other in a certain category does not change the chemistry between you and does not change the way your energy plays and
Mm.
dances with each other. So that can be tricky even if you're saying you're friends. So I'm going to let time tell on that one,
Yeah.
and we
Me
can
too.
we can follow up, and yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, totally fair. Like I said, haven't had prior experience in this category either. So I'm glad to hear your thoughts. And I'm glad to hear that for both of us, it's kind of an unfinished novel, which can be beautiful in its own right. So,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, one time you explained to me the difference between a karmic connection and a soulmate connection. And I think that would be really helpful for people to hear because sometimes when you are very in tune with yourself, you feel that pull to someone else and you assume that it means that you're meant to be together in perpetuity.
Hmm.
Would you be open to discussing that distinguishment between those 2?
Sure. And I don't know if my definitions are going to be the same as they were when we spoke about this probably 2 years ago. Uh, because I think some of the way I approach this has changed a little bit.
Mhm.
Probably not a lot, but a little bit. And I think that's the beauty of getting to know yourself better and being open to engaging with life around you because things do change. Like you have this, just imagine this ball of energy that is working around your mental capacity, and as you start to get more curious and you start to have more experiences and you're viewing them through a different lens, this begins to expand and continues to expand and grow. And so the limited view that you had before will then become larger
Mm.
over time, and so the way you define things and the way you interpret things and perceive things may change. So, just a caveat in case this is different than what I said to you a few years ago, I stand behind whatever that was, but it may have changed now. Um, so let's start with karmic relationships because karma, karmic, that's used a lot in spiritual circles, and people sometimes use it in terms of relationships that are meant to be, or like we're karmically bonded. And soulmate could also be thought of the same way. Karma, I think, often gets a little bit of a bad rap. It's karmic in nature. I mean, my business name is Karmic Kindness, but it's what the meaning of that is that when you think of karma, I think of it as balance. Okay. You're looking to balance the scale. So you can look at it like if there was someone who was a dictator in one life and overpowered his people might come the people might come back as a dictator, and the dictator might come back as somebody that was oppressed. And so your soul is having these different experiences so that it can know, it can feel, it can have the experience of what it's like to be on both ends of the spectrum. Okay, so that's a very simplified version. When it comes to a karmic relationship, this doesn't necessarily mean it's a personal relationship between two people, although I feel like it certainly can be. It can also be an energetic one. So you say, I'd like to come in and I would love to experience true love, but for whatever reason, we can't live happily ever after. I want to experience this true love with a hiccup,
Mm.
with a glitch, whatever that is. But that's something, and we as humans think, why on earth would I do that? Why would I choose to have this challenge or this hardship in my life? That's crazy. But if you think about the soul doesn't define things as good or bad. The soul is all about
Mhm.
experience. So the soul is going to look for the most diverse, incredible experiences it can find. And those often are not experiences that feel good. They're often challenges that allow us to expand and grow and feel the complexity of what's available to us in human form, in the form of emotions, which not all life forms are able to experience. So basically, with karmic relationships, you come together for an experience, for a purpose, and you're magnetized for each other because you kind of fit together. You want this experience. He or she wants this experience. Oh, you're magnetized and drawn together, and then you have it. You complete it. And this is where I think people get tripped up all the time. You complete the experience. You're in this romantic, you've been taught, you stay together forever. You make it work for the kids. You make it work because religion says so. You make it work because society looks down on you if you don't. And you stay in a relationship that really is done. It's past its karmic expiry date because we're conditioned to think that that is what we do. And I feel like kind of like what you and I are experiencing now, and we're, you know, tiptoeing our way through, fumbling our way through, whatever you want to call it. It's knowing when, and this is something that I think every person is an individual choice and an individual decision, knowing when to call it, knowing when to say, I feel like we completed what we came here to do, at least in this form. So, I mean, my intention with Misha is I can't imagine my life without him. I cannot imagine not being able to pick up the phone and call him or see him for dinner or tell him about this funny experience that occurred. Am I going to lean on him and have him be my person that I go to for everything all the time? No, because that's inappropriate. But would I call a girlfriend or a guy friend and tell them these things? Would I say, let's get together for dinner? Would I say, let's go to the show? Yeah. So that's kind of my checks and balances. Would I do this with a friend regardless of our history? So with a karmic relationship, most people feel when they're unaware of what's happening, they come to the completion point. On some level,
Mm.
they kind of know it, but they're too scared for all the reasons I already named to extricate themselves or to complete it. So that's the karmic part. You're magnetized for a reason. You have this experience, you complete it, and then that's when you are to go on to the next experience, but we tend not to. Soulmate experiences can be, we often think of soulmate as love partners, as people that we are in a romantic relationship with. And soulmates can come in many, many forms, and they tend not to necessarily have longevity. We think of soulmates from romantic comedies, from love stories, from literature, as you have this meaning, it's faded, it's fraught with all of this like back and forth, or it's rainbows and unicorns the whole time, whatever the storyline is, and they live happily ever after, forever and ever, amen. Not necessarily. Soulmates, think about it like your soul has this like little beacon on it, and it's just you living your life and doing you. And especially if you're living your purpose, or you're living true to yourself, and you're doing the things that bring you joy, and you're shining your light everywhere you go. And when I say shining your light, it's just by being you. There's nothing more than that that's required. And you start to draw people to you, people that, like you were saying, the people that you met, that you were in conversation with and lit you up and you just loved it. They're probably soulmates on some level. Whether you ever see them again or not, you came together because they opened something up in you. They awaken something in you. And the people that stick around, the people that become your mates, as far as, like the British term mate, as in friend, they become your soul friends, or they become soul loves. To me, they're like I think of them like cosmic family, your galactic family. It's the people that you've known for lifetimes from all over the universe. And here you are on Earth right now at the same time. How cool is that? And you found each other in this world of billions of people. And there's this immediate knowing and this immediate comfort and this like heart explosion around them, whether you see them for 5 minutes or for the next 50 years. To me, those are soulmates. Those are people that have an impact on you, no matter what the time frame is on the earthly plane.
That's really
How does
interesting.
that compare to before?
It's pretty similar. The karmic kind of like you're living out a lesson versus the soulmate as just the two souls are meant to match in some regard. And so what you were saying about the soul not like labeling things as good or bad, I literally just wrote an article called The Soul Has No Labels. And it's all about that, how it's about seeking experience and, you know, there is no such thing as good or bad. That's a human thing that we've, you know, attached onto things.
Mm.
And so what I was thinking about is I did hear a podcast talking about how serial monogamy is kind of like the future. Like maybe you're meeting your more soulmates and you're finding out your time is due, and it's different than maybe what the church said or whatever history, made it seem like was, the ideal. But we're evolving together. And like you said, every relationship that I've been in, good and bad, if we're labeling in human aspects, I have learned so much, not just in general, but about myself and what I need and what I don't need and what makes things healthy for me because it's very different than anybody else in the same situation. So I feel like a lot of people are stuck in the pain of things. And I've been there too. But nowadays, I'm someone that gets so excited to glean lessons from everything and seeing those things as challenges and like, what was that for? Like, what am I supposed to get out of that? Like, what did I learn here? I see it as a wonderful, exciting thing. But for most people, it's like, I don't want to think about that. Like it hurts enough already. I don't want to analyze it. So how do you recommend somebody start going about that kind of different perspective on things?
Well, I think it depends on the person again, too, because there are some people that aren't really analytically minded. They more operate from the sphere of experience. So it would be hard for them. Like I have clients who can't journal. They just can't do it. It's almost impossible for them to fathom sitting down and putting a pen to a paper or typing up their thoughts and feelings. For them, it's a felt experience. So for them, it's how they feel in their body, how they're moving. They notice the sensations. They notice the felt experience that's happening with them versus analyzing it or writing things out. I think you and I, Sammy, are very analytically minded. So writing things out or creating Venn diagrams or charts or whatever it is totally cool, like all day long. But for other people, that's really hard. So talking and sharing their feelings with someone that they trust is one way to do it that can reflect back to them what they are hearing. Another way, and one thing I tell a lot of my clients who have trouble with the journaling process, is voice notes to themselves.
Yes.
So it's like
I do that
voice
all the time too.
I do, yes, same, because that's also really valuable to hear yourself sharing something that is otherwise you hear in your own head or you feel within your body. You can even articulate different sensations that you're feeling and start to pay attention if they continue to repeat. What's happening when they repeat? Who are you with? What are you doing? And is there a pattern that you can see? And this is not something, if even if you don't have a very analytical, you can just kind of take note of these things as you live your life and begin to see things that are opening up for you. And when I say opening up for you, it's like, again, that awareness begins to
Yeah.
expand a little bit more. So it doesn't need to be huge things. It can be smaller things. One thing I just want to go back for 1 second. We were talking about karma and these karmic relationships as lessons. Yes, but I want to put a little tiny little asterisks there because they're not lessons in a negative way. Like it's always like the saying like, I'm going to teach you a lesson, or
Oh, yeah.
it has a little bit of a heavy and and that sort of connotation to it. And we think about karmic relationships as heavy, and they can be. They absolutely can be. They carry this dense quality to them that feels like a lot to our systems. Oftentimes, not always. There's always exceptions to the rule. Think about it as more like a um a targeted soul experience that might have different layers and nuances, where a soulmate experience is a little bit different. Those can also be challenging. It's not like any of these are inherently easy, quote unquote, but they just have slightly different felt experiences for each person. And that could be different based on the person too. How much can your system hold? What is your
Mm.
capacity to deal with challenge? Are you able to access your feelings? And if you are, can you actually articulate them? Is the person in front of you able to receive those articulated feelings, or
Yeah.
are they like, whoa, too much, shut down? So as you can see, there's like so many different ways that we can experience these relationships, of which there are different people, relational dynamics, there are different types of relationships, there's different depths, there's different contexts, there's different long time spans. That's why this area of work, I could probably write 20 books about it
Yeah.
and still barely scratch the surface of like one subset. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of qualify that little bit just so that people don't feel quite so like ugh, about it, even though there is that texture to it. There's also a lot of really cool things and blessings within it as well.
Absolutely. A lot of the lessons are, wow, that's the type of love that I know that I want, you know? I've
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
had those moments. One thing for me in these processes is the dissonance and the time in between the inner recognition that something isn't right and the taking action. I've always struggled with this, even when I like inherently knew that the relationship had to end or that it wasn't good for me or that it wasn't, you know, meant to be continued. That space between the realization and the discussion or the action is so excruciating for me. And my mom would say to me, like, you don't have to make a decision right now. But for me, it was so heavy to have that decision to make that it's almost better to just make it because it's all I can think about and it's twisting my heart every day, all day. So keeping me up at night. So what do you recommend people do in that period between when your nervous system is telling you, I don't feel safe to end this relationship, but your soul knows that you need to? How do you be gentle with both sides there?
That's such a tender question. What strikes me most about it is that in between, that liminal phase of the knowing and the doing. And, in We to Me in my book, I talk about that in between place where also you can make a decision and be really firm and sure about that decision. And then something happens and you're like, well, wait, maybe I don't have to do that because this just happened and this shows me that there's hope and this, it can change and we can be fine. And I don't have to do the thing that I know I need to do now that I see this because this shows me that there's a chance. And so, in the book, I talk about a number of different things that you can do to finally make that decision. But your question is, once you've made the decision, between that and when you actually take the action, I think is slightly different. So if somebody is unsure, there's a number of different ways, like I said, I mentioned in the book. And I'll give a couple of those and then I'll answer your question specifically. The first thing is really getting, and because they piggyback off of each other, is really getting to know your IGS, your internal guidance system, your intuition, and being able to trust it. And so it's practicing trust within yourself to trust what information is coming through for you. And you can do that with simple things like getting to know your your hell yes and your hell no. That feeling that you get in your body when it's a yes, and that feeling you get in your body when it's a no. And you can do that simply by having someone ask you a question that you would likely say yes to. Where do you feel it in your body? What sensations are there? And then having them ask you a question you would likely say no to, do the same thing. And whenever you feel that sensation going forward, you have a general sense of that's a yes or no. I think that's really helpful for people to know. Now, the other part of that is to be aware and to look around at signs and symbols and synchronicities that happen around you, or you're in that place of uncertainty, or you think you're certain, but you can't quite get over that hump of doing something. So
Yeah.
those are two baseline places I think you can start. Now you're pretty sure, like you're fairly confident you know what you need to do, but you really just can't muster up the courage to take
Yeah.
that action. Likely because of what you were saying, your nervous system. That is when I say work on your nervous system. Don't worry about doing anything in the moment. It's how do you shore that? And that is by paying attention to your body when you feel any of those rolling stomach feelings or those feelings of the wave of anxiety or the racing heart. How do you come back into yourself? Two simple ways to do that. The first one is, especially if you're one whose mind is racing, like, oh my God, I know I need to do this, but I can't do it. And oh my God, what am I going to do? And this is so terrible. Blah, 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 blah. That whole thing it's called the UFO hold. And you put your one hand on your forehead and the other on your occiput on the back of your head. I recommend doing this laying down because if you think about this sitting up, your arms are going to get tired real fast.
Yeah.
And you hold your hands here and you can lay down, use pillows to support you until you feel your whole entire body. It feels like it's just melting into your couch or floor or bed. I love my bed personally to do this practice. And also the other thing is have an awareness of your breath. So your eyes are
Mhm.
closed. You're just with yourself. This is telling your body and your mind, you're safe, you're held, it's okay. And that in and of itself allows you to kind of slow things down, quiet the mind, and bring you back into a place of center. So after you do that, I like to put my hands over my heart and just allow the warmth of my hands to really permeate my heart center and to feel my heartbeat beneath my hands. It's alerting me that I'm safe. It's alerting me that I am with me, that I have me. And that in and of itself, over time, gives you this sense of safety. That sense of safety then allows you to make some of the
Mhm.
difficult, take the difficult actions that you need to take. So that's one practice over time that will cumulatively support you. The other simple practice, and as you know, these are going to all, at least these two are physically based because you are looking to bring yourself into a place of safety. And that's oftentimes the reason why we're not able to take the action because we're scared of ending something that's bringing us comfort and security. We're scared of being alone. We're scared of hurting that other person's feelings. And so, first, it's like shoring up our sense of self, shoring up our sense of safety before. The other thing is taking one hand, putting it under your armpit, And then taking the other hand and bringing it over to your shoulder and closing your eyes and just kind of holding yourself here. You're showing yourself that you can hold yourself. It's giving you a boundary where somebody else isn't coming into your energy and infiltrating your energy, where then you're merged with somebody else and you have trouble differentiating what's mine, what's theirs,
Mm,
who am I? Is it I don't know. So this really kind of brings you back into your sense of self. And this can be for a few moments, and you can even do this in front of someone and just see how your energy shifts. Um, you oftentimes see people closing their arms. Sometimes they're cold, sometimes they're closing off their energy. But this is like I'm keeping you out. This is I'm holding myself here.
yeah.
It's a different quality of that felt somatic sense.
Mm,
Let me see what else wants to come through as far as that liminal space between the knowing and the doing. The other thing that you can do if you know that you need to have that hard conversation and you're having trouble doing it is several ways you can do it. First of all, writing out kind of the bullet points of what it is that you're thinking and feeling, your reasons why you feel like you need to make this decision, why it's important, and not just about you, but also taking the other person into account and letting them know this is not a decision that you took lightly. It's not a decision that's
yeah.
all about you. It's a decision that you're making for yourself, but also because you honor and love that person as well. If you are really scared and you really are worried about how they're going to take it, you can share what you're going to say, at least the basic broad strokes, with someone and ask them how they would receive those words.
Mm,
Is there something that you say that might not sting quite as much, or say in a way that's a little clearer, or say it in a way that maybe they need it to be a very pointed, direct, you've tried this before and they're not getting it sort of.
mm,
Are they going to get it this time? Or can I say it in this way that I'm not going to backpedal? But I think having clarity within yourself so that whenever you deliver the message, there's no ambiguity. You're really resigned to what you're saying. And because some people might not take it well, they may want to debate it. They may have their own feelings and say, well, okay, well, I can change that, or I'll be better, or I'll do this differently, or whatever. If you know in your heart of hearts that that is your truth for you, you also need to be prepared to stand firm,
mm,
or you're going to
yeah.
loop through this whole thing again. And now it's even stickier because you've opened this door to something that you can't close the door to once it's out. So that those would be my
Yeah.
recommendations.
I really love the somatic aspects. One, because it gives you something concrete you can do in the moment. But two, because once you feel safe with yourself and you know that you will be okay with yourself and you're always going to be holding yourself, then you won't settle based in fear of being alone. You won't stay in
Mhm.
places that aren't good for you. So I think that's, on a multiple levels, very important. Um, for me, I am a huge, big on ethics. And so a lot of my decisions come down to the ethics of I don't want the other person to be in the dark about something. And I'm just going to go out and say it because then they can make an educated decision themselves, all of these things. Um, and so I battle myself about the ethical aspects of things. And one thing I really appreciated in this discussion was when I asked about, being friends after, having that chemistry and everything. You allowed yourself to step back and not have a direct answer because there is no right answer, right? And it's different for everybody and it's different for every situation. And I think there's a there's a beauty in letting go of that pressure of there being a quote unquote right way of doing things.
Mhm. I agree. I agree. I think there's so many there's so many pathways, there's so many nuances, there's so many experiences, and what I chose to experience as Amalia may be different than what you have chosen as Sammy, even though we're walking a similar walk right now. you and your former partner are different people than me and Misha. So there's going to be different, just the way I see it, it's like these different facets of the
Mhm.
experience, even though it's got undercurrent of similarity.
Yeah. Same with all of the human experience, right? Like we all experience the same general emotions. It's just the small little aspects of our individual experiences that will never be the same. And that's another beauty of it, right? And it makes it so that there is no right answer. And being okay with that is the next step, right? Um, because I still find myself like my soul once loved to be enough. And I was having a discussion about it yesterday. Like I know love isn't enough, but I still want it to be, and that's okay. You know, I
Yeah.
still ache for
Yeah.
that. I still yeah, and that's okay. Like, I don't have to shut down my feelings, I can just accept them and do what I know is right. One question that I had for you overall in writing this book, you are honest and raw and so approachable in the way that you tell your story and teach your lessons, and it's so beautiful. And as somebody who loves to write and wants to share my lessons with people so that they don't have to learn them the hard way, I'm curious about the difference between your first draft and in editing. It's so easy to say, like, that makes me look weird, or, well, I don't know about that, how people will interpret that. So when you get to that editing phase, like you said, it's a very different feeling of being in the now versus looking at it a year from now. How did you draw that boundary where you clarity, but you didn't lose any authenticity? And maybe about the bravery that it took to do that.
Well, thank you for your kind words about the book. Uh, so I started writing the book in the midst of the disentanglement from Rob and in my journal. And I didn't know it was a book. I thought it was just me getting my feelings out on the page because I have no problem journaling. I'm a prolific journaler. If I don't journal today, it feels like I didn't brush my teeth. Like it's just not who I am. So what I realized as I was journaling and going back and reading some of my journal entries, which I recommend that people do also, because journaling without reflection is not as helpful as it could be. And I think, Sammy, you know this from our work together. It's like I'm all about that. Got to go back and review.
Absolutely.
Is that it looked like it ended up that I was writing it for others. It wasn't just I was writing it for me. The way I was writing it, I was like, wow, that's interesting. So that's the first iteration of part of the book. And then when I sat down to actually write the book with intention, it was very clunky. It was very awkward. I wasn't sure what I was writing. Some of it was me just venting on the page. Some of it was me feeling very tender on the page, and it didn't really have any cohesive flow. I started writing it then chronologically. I got rid of the journal pages. Like it went through so many changes, and it took me several years to write it because it was it was very raw. It was very vulnerable, like you were saying. But I also had to think about my kids because my kids
Mhm.
would be directly affected by this book because it was about their father and they
Mhm.
were intertwined in the storyline. So that was another piece of the writing that I think held me back a little bit and kept the book in this limbo place for a lot longer than I would have. Like this next book that I'm writing won't be caught in this limbo place because my kids are
Yeah.
not directly connected to it. And Misha is, but I have his blessing. So it's a completely different situation than it was with Rob and my kids because Rob knew about the book, but he wasn't exactly thrilled about the book. So I had that kind of pressure on me. I did work with a developmental editor who helped me really keep the book on track. I don't plan on working with one on this particular book because I don't feel like I need one. But I think for anyone who's looking to write a memoir style personal development or self help book where they're sharing strategies and tips and they're telling a very personal story, it's helpful to have another set of eyes there and help you put the pieces together, especially since I didn't tell the story in chronological order. So there was a lot of timeline jumping
Mhm.
and bringing in different things. That could get confusing for the reader if somebody else doesn't have eyes on it, who don't know me, don't know the story, to help say, okay, I understand this, I don't understand that, expand more here, expand more there. The one thing that my editor did say to me over and over again was that I wasn't angry enough when I wrote the book, because by the time I got to the writing, was really at peace with everything.
Yeah.
I had spent so much time and energy on processing it that I felt pretty good. And the last thing I wanted to do was go back in time and
Yeah.
relive it to the point where I was getting back in that, like, feeling. So I don't think I've shared this anywhere before. So your people are going to hear it first, Sammy. I actually asked Rob if he wanted to contribute a chapter for the book, to not really tell his side of the story, but just to tell his experience and to allow
Mm.
him to share anything that he felt like he wanted to share. And he declined, and in a way that really pushed my buttons. And so I went back and I added a couple little things here and there in the book, because I thought my editor was on my tail about, I need more. You got to meet your reader where they are. Your reader just found out their husband had an affair. They're pissed and they're feeling
That's
hurt and
true.
they're feeling all the things. And you're way too kumbaya over here. He's like, that's great. You want them to get there, but they're not there yet. So let's access that anger. And so that allowed me to get there. And I was able to add a few little things to the book that felt like I was in integrity. You talk about ethics. It's the same to me. It's similar. It felt like an integrity. Before adding it, didn't feel like I was in integrity, because we were in a pretty good place. And we still
Yeah.
were, even though he declined, but there were other reasons I'm not going to go into as to why it activated. And so, I think in the end, the book came through in a way that somewhat demonstrated the arc of the roller coaster of the experience that I had, while taking practical or sharing practical strategies and practices that people could use if they found themselves in a similar situation. Or even, I've had people that have read the book that haven't been married or haven't had infidelity in a relationship, and found some of the practices useful in getting to know themselves better.
Yeah.
I've had men who then understood what their wives or partners went through when there was infidelity in their relationship, and some where there wasn't. And now they know, oh man, like this, that's really harmful. There's a lot of collateral damage in this particular path. Okay, not interested in that. So that surprised me a lot. Were the
Mm.
male readers, number of male readers, and their responses, at least the ones that shared with me, their responses to the book. And they really appreciated the fact that it wasn't a man bashing book. And I think the
Mm.
women appreciate, at least some, appreciate the fact that they felt like they could be safely held in whatever experience they had and whatever path they took, whether they stayed or they moved on. And that was the other part. The end of the book, the whole last section, is about empowering women to really understand their financial world, their sovereignty, take the steps you need to understand, be financially literate. I partnered up with a gal who, there's some information in the back of the book about her, and we've shared some resources online where we really want women to understand their worth and their value, and understand how money can be really, what is the word I'm looking for? Like, it's not the scary, daunting thing.
Mhm.
You are valuable. You are worth. You can make a shit ton of money and do some really great things in the world. You don't need a man to tell you how to do it. You don't need a man to guide and direct you. You have that power yourself.
Yeah.
Take it, do it. You can. And don't be scared. Don't defer to your partner or your father or your brother or a male friend that you think knows what is going on, because I guarantee you they don't have it all figured out. And just a little bit of time and effort, I bet you could really, like, blow the top off of your bank account.
You're so right. And that's another thing that we can do to ensure that we're not staying in places where we shouldn't be based on that fear or that
Yes,
reliance. So, absolutely. Absolutely.
exactly. Yes.
So, since we have a time constraint here, I'd love to just wrap up with what
Mhm.
do you want the person listening to know? How do you want them to get in better touch with themselves? What comes through to you as your main message for today?
Mm. What's coming through very clearly is a very overused saying. So I'm going to add to it is trust yourself. Don't doubt yourself. And when I say that, this is what I mean. I mean, when that little voice inside of you or that little sparkle that when you're really in tune and in the flow with what you love and what you're here to do, when that activates within you, pay attention and know that when that is happening, regardless of the outside world, regardless what people are telling you, that is your truth. That is what you trust right there. You don't doubt yourself based on external chit chat, blah, blah, blahing around you. It's that felt sense. And I guarantee you everyone has had one of those experiences where doing something or even sometimes not. I'll tell you one of my experiences was I was sitting on a lounge chair by a pool in South Florida before I lived here. And it was a not even a sunny day. It was like slightly overcast, but the temperature was perfect. I was by myself and I was like, this is the perfect day. I felt so at peace and so calm and so like, ah, knew in that moment there was something to that, but I didn't know exactly what. Translation, if you fast forward, it is I was meant to be in South Florida and I was meant to feel that sense of by myself. I've had
Mm,
similar feelings with people. I've had that feeling a lot when I'm with all my kids. When I have all my kids with me, my heart is so happy
mm.
and so full of joy. So it's like just pay attention to those moments when you feel that and know that it's like this little tiny soul message. It's a little bit of a nudge moving you in a direction. And it often is not grand. It's not like lightning bolts or spotlights or there's some grand thing. It can be. I'm not saying it's not, but we're looking at those simple moments when everything feels like you're in flow. Those are the moments that are telling you to trust yourself. Don't doubt yourself. You're on the right track. Keep going. You're good. And you know why you're good? Because you have yourself. And that person isn't going anywhere. You can tell him or her, just take a back seat like we do sometimes when they're telling us things we don't want to know, but they don't leave the back seat. They stay there. And it's this whole trust yourself, love yourself, believe in yourself, don't doubt yourself. I hope I've given a little bit more context to these overused sayings that allow people to feel what that means, not just like intellectualize it, to actually feel it.
I I absolutely agree, and I think I would add to that, hold yourself, because something I've learned
Mhm.
over the years and over the healing journey is that telling yourself, "I'm here for you, and we'll get through this together," and those type of things, like, means a lot more than you would intellectually think that it would.
Mhm.
Tell yourself what you need to hear, like, validate yourself. Sometimes I'm like, "Oh, you poor baby." Like, "I hate that you're going through this," you know? Whatever it needs to be.
Yeah.
Validate yourself. It's and trust that if you're having the emotions, they're meant to be there and they're meant to lead you somewhere. So,
Yeah.
this was a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for being here, and, I'm excited to keep in the loop with your new book and everything.
Thank you. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you for having me on. You were so wise. I love what you just shared, and I'm truly honored to have been on your beautiful podcast. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your night. Thank you so much for sharing your truth and your wisdom with us, Amalia. This conversation has been a reminder that relationships are not meant to complete us. They're meant to reveal us. And in that, we to me is not a story about loss. It's a story about reclamation. of voice, agency, and the courage to live in alignment rather than habit. You can find Amalia's book, her work through karmic kindness, and her podcasts linked in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and thank you for staying with yourself long enough to hear what is true. Until next time, keep shining.